Taking the time to join us for our second small school joint programming session on mental health best practices for your athletics department. Before we get started, on behalf of the Division II ADA, NAIA ADA, NADICA, and NADIA, we want to thank you for joining us today. These groups continue to look for ways to engage their membership and provide content pertinent in today's world, and we know that you will have some great takeaways after today's session. Now for today's webinar, we have 170 participants joining us, and to ensure you are seeing the panelists, we recommend you put your video on active speaker view. If you have any questions throughout the course of the live webinar, feel free to use the chat feature on the bottom of your screen. You can direct your questions to myself, Courtney McGinn, and I will relay those to Kevin and Mike. Please note that there will be a brief question and answer session at the conclusion of today's webinar, and we hope to answer the majority of the questions during that time. Today we are extremely fortunate to have both Kevin Salisbury and Michael Momini with us to discuss mental health best practices in your athletics department. While these are best practices, it is important to note that our college athletics landscape is ever changing, so please keep that in mind. Kevin Salisbury is the Director of Athletics at the Community College of Rhode Island and the NADICA Second Vice President. Michael Momini is the Director of Athletics at Nova Southeastern University and also a D2 ADA board member. Before we get started, we're going to share a quick video with you guys.
It's quiet. Underwater is quiet. 6 years old is the first time that I think I know I caught the swimming bug. My mom walked into my room and I was belting out the national anthem. And she was like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "I'm practicing the national anthem for when I win the Olympics." I wanted to show that I was tough and that I had everything under control. I felt more anxiety, and what I did was I just pushed it down. Then it spiraled into the bulimia. You think that maybe if you're a little bit lighter in the water, it would be a little bit faster. I wasn't sleeping at all. You can hide it very, very well. I think that's the scary part with mental health.
When something bad happens, I turn to like a destructive mindset.
I was like jittery, and I've never been jittery before. I've never been like nauseous.
I felt very isolated, like I was on an island by myself.
I'd almost make myself feel sick some days.
It felt like my heart was breaking.
Almost like walls were closing in on me. Anytime you're feeling tight or tense, you can use this breathing to induce that relaxation response. So before sitting up, gently stretch your arms, your legs. Here at CSUMB, we are trying to meet those best practices based on the resources that we have. And we don't have much. Even if that means a couple more hours in the day, everyone here on campus is willing to put in that time. If we're able to give them the skill set to cope with stressors, they feel this sense of competency.
It's not a weakness to say that you're struggling or to reach out for help. And you're not alone in what you're going through. In Michigan, we had sports psychologists that were on campus. We had groups that we could go to. I made sure I talked to those people and started to work through what was making me anxious and what was making me feel all the pressure. started to look at the people around me who absolutely loved me and supported me and were there for me. I just, holy cow.
And there's your ballerina.
Yeah. Look at those bangs. I think that's the bigger issue. At the time, I thought my calling was swimming. I don't think you can break it down like that. I think my calling now is being happy.
All right, Kevin, I'll go ahead and let you take it away.
Excellent. Thank you, Courtney. I want to thank Courtney and Jason for helping us out here, get all these slides together. And we're going to continue here. So imagine all those issues you just saw in that video. And then now couple that with what I call the perfect storm. We had COVID-19, we had unemployment, we had sports taken away, and now we have civil unrest in the country. All of these tackled on to what athletes and individuals are already experiencing is just amazing and phenomenal. If you look at the, this is an NCAA survey on your screen now. This was just done. This was published on May 22nd. And if you look at the last paragraph there, over a third of respondents reported experiencing sleep difficulties, while more than a quarter reported feeling sadness and a sense of loss, and 1 in 10 reported feeling so depressed it was difficult to function constantly. The next slide is a study from University Business, which we'll talk a little bit more about here, but it says more than half of students surveyed said they wouldn't know where to go to seek help. This is where coaches come into play. Staff comes into play here. It's so important that I feel that coaches need to develop and staff need to develop that trust with their student athletes in order for the student athletes to feel so comfortable that they can actually come forward when they have issues. Most of the time, the coach and or the athletic trainers, I always refer to the athletic training room as the confessional. It's where a lot of discussion occurs among student athletes, and athletic trainers certainly hear a lot of it. And that's information that needs to be brought forward to the people that need to know. I'll give you a second to read through this. This is an actual text between a student athlete and an assistant coach. And here's a slide that continues with a conversation from another athlete. So again, this is real. These are actual texts from student athletes and from coaches. In a survey that was done from the University Business slide that we just saw, this was published on May 8th, 2020. There were, 91% actually mentioned they had some type of stress or anxiety. 81% had disappointment or sadness. 80% loneliness or isolation. Financial setback, 48%, and then relocation, 56%. Prior to COVID-19, there were 9.2 million college students that were experiencing some type of health concern. In the last 12 months, this was a study done out of the National College Health Assessment in 2018, and I'm going to give you some of the most recent studies that we've had. In the last 12 months, 87% of those assessed were overwhelmed. 53% were considered hopeless. In a Healthy Mind study in 2019, where 62,000 college students were actually questioned, 36% said they had some type of depression. 31% had some type of anxiety disorder. 37% lifetime diagnosis of a mental health issue. And then 56% were either in psychological therapy and or on psychiatric meds. They were also asked, in the last 4 weeks, how many days have you felt that emotional or mental difficulties have hurt your academic performance? And if you notice here, about 44% stated they were anywhere between 3 and 6 days were troublesome when it came to academic impairment. When it comes to positive mental health, in the same study of 62,000 students, positive mental health is actually measured using the flourishing scale, which is an 8-item summary measure of the respondents' self-perceived success in important areas such as relationships, self-esteem, purpose, and optimism. Positive mental health was measured with a score of 48 or better. The scores range anywhere from 8 to 56 in this inventory, and only 40% were in that range above or 48 or more. When they asked about knowledge of campus mental health resources, so if I needed to seek professional help for my mental emotional health, I would know where to go on my campus. This is decent. 30% agreed, 27% strongly agreed, and 18% somewhat agreed. I think that says much about the relationships that maybe some coaches have with their student athletes. And the student athletes feel very comfortable about coming to their coaches and or an athletic trainer and or a staff member when they are do have some trouble. When asked about the perceived need in the last 12 months, I needed help. 24% strongly agree, 18% agreed, and 17% somewhat agreed. So a good majority actually perceived that they needed help. And that's a key word, perceived. If you perceive something, obviously you feel it. And it's very, very important to know that. Behavior issues are mostly recognized by athletic trainers, coaches, and maybe even peers. When it came to perceived need, which is current, I currently need help or for emotional or mental health problems. 23% agreed, 23% strongly agreed, 23% agreed, and then 29% somewhat agreed. So again, the numbers are pretty staggering and pretty high in this regard. And again, this was from the Healthy Mind study, again, of 62,000 students. Now, what can we do to help? Here at the Community College of Rhode Island, we have the entire staff, coaching staff, and any other full-time or part-time staff that has any type of significant contact with students and or student athletes. And we went through what they call the mental health first aid course. This course is a blueprint for providing comfort, promoting recovery, and also help reducing stress among student athletes and or students. It is designed to give people the skills to help someone who is developing a mental health problem. So again, it's not, you don't have to be a professional psychologist or psychiatrist to be certified after this course or even take this course. This is for anybody. This is for anybody to help those student athletes that do come to you, or the students that do come to you in need of that help. So mental health first aid uses an acronym to teach certain things within the course, and it's called ALGE. A is assess the risk for suicide or harm. They actually teach you how to approach that subject. I know a lot of individuals, including myself, it's hard to confront somebody and simply ask the question, are you going to hurt yourself? Do you feel you're going to hurt yourself? That is actually an okay question to ask. As a matter of fact, it's a pretty good one to ask in most instances, if in fact it gets to that level. L is listen non-judgmentally. Again, listening is a great skill. That's why we have 2 ears and 1 mouth. Give reassurance and information. Tell them that they're going to be okay. We're going to work through this. And again, there's a lot of information in this course. with this acronym. Encourage appropriate professional help. Again, we're going to refer those student athletes. Most community colleges anyway, and D3, D2, NAI may be slightly different, but for most community colleges, there's not a lot of funding to have either a social worker on board, a psychologist, a sports psychologist, or even a psychiatrist or an MD on staff somewhere. So much of our information is actually referral. We have to refer, but we need to know where to refer these students and these student athletes to go. And then finally, E, the other E is encourage self-help and other support strategies. Again, this is just, the course just includes a discussion of campus culture. It discusses a discussion of the specific stress and risk factors faced by higher ed population, applying the ALGE action plan in a number of scenarios designed specifically for faculty, administration, coaches, and students. There have been other students that have actually taken this course. And then finally, a review of all the mental health resources that we can refer our student athletes or students to. This is just a list of the individuals that the mental health first aid course actually designates as individuals who could possibly get something out of the course. And as you can see, there's a list of anybody that comes in contact with student athletes or students on any given day. Here's some of the information where you can find the course and information about the course and where it might be being taught for you or around you. The course took, it was a 2-day course for us. It was about 7 to 8 hours each day. And it was taught by professional instructors with guest speakers such as psychologists, psychiatrists, social workers coming on board with firsthand knowledge of a lot of the instances that they see. This was a slide that I added actually not too long ago, probably about 4 or 5 days ago. And thanks for Courtney again for readjusting everything. But this came out of the SUNY system, which is a New Yorker's. It was published on May 28th. And it had the top risk factors for mental health issues for individuals in New York, where we were hardest hit. Massachusetts, again, up here in the Northeast, was also greatly hit. But if you look at this, one of the risk factors was perceived risk of infection of the virus. They're just afraid to get it. A sick relative at home. This one was the most predictive of anxiety and depression. Job loss. As you know, a lot of people on unemployment at the moment, which affected so many. Food insecurity. At least at the junior college, we have a ton of student athletes that have trouble putting food on the table. So this becomes another major problem. Couple that with job loss, and really, we got some serious stuff going on. And then being an essential worker. Some of our students are actually nurses, are actually firefighters, could be police officers going out into the field, and now they're worried as well. There was one story I heard with one essential worker that I know, a policewoman, who actually came home. She just had 2 kids, twins. She was scared to death going to work. She was an essential worker. She would come home, actually strip down outside naked and walk through the house because she was scared to death of infecting her family, and then go live in a room each night, a separate room. So just imagine that coupled with everything else going on right now. And then some other challenges that this study came up with was relationships are challenged, right? We're going to see some relationships that are going to be troubled. We're going to possibly see divorce, suicide, hopefully not, but it could be part of it. We're also seeing now psychologists and psychiatrists are seeing substance abuse as a coping method. And obviously PTSD could be an issue coming forward. And here's some suggestions that we have. Again, try to develop a peer support team on your campus that can help. Educate the coaches and staff, whether it be the mental health first aid or some other type of educational system to get that. Basically to recognize, report, and refer. And then provide tactical skills in mindfulness. Somewhere you can get help from a psychology professor when it comes to mindfulness. Other suggestions, again, what we try to hear anyway at CCRI is we try to get the kids to understand, the student athletes to understand that we need you to worry about what you're in control of, period. And that's hard. That's hard for anybody. Never mind a student athlete. It's hard for anybody. We get worried about so much that we do not control. And that's, honestly, that's useless to worry about stuff like that. So we try to focus them in on things that they can control. Some of the things we can do here at the college level is yoga classes, once we are okay to do this. Exercising certainly helps. Balanced diet, sleeping schedule, ask them about their sleep schedule. How many hours of sleep are they getting? And then help them with that. And then relaxation exercises, One of the best known is the Jacobson's relaxation technique, where it's a progressive relaxation of the entire muscle groups in your body, and then possibly going through a visualization scene at the end of that with their sport or being successful in some way, shape, or form. Here's another exercise that we use with student athletes. It's called the brain dump exercise. It's kind of neat. And again, when we talked about control, this sort of brings out information about, and it puts it right on paper for the student athletes, what they can and cannot control. So for instance, step one would be you would ask the student athlete to write down all tasks that need to be accomplished according to them. Step two, now we're going to organize all of those thoughts in step one into the following headings. Heading one, what are you thankful for? That's going to highlight all the positive aspects in your life. Heading number two, what are the frustrations in your life? That's going to highlight what you want to change. And then finally, heading three is what do I want? This is going to help these student athletes set that future vision or direction, things that they will have control over. And then finally, my last exercise is a distress tolerance tool, acronym T.I.P.P. T.I.P.P. stands for temperature. The exercise starts with splashing cold water on your face, which actually brings your heart rate down. If you think about it, when you're hot and hot under the collar, you're angry, you're stressed, that temperature goes up, so does your heart rate and your breathing. So that cold water splash actually helps. Intense exercise obviously distracts the mind. One of the things that a lot of the coaches can do is once they get the kids to practice, say, listen, we need your focus for 2 hours or an hour and a half or however long practice is. And we want you to try to forget about everything else going on in your life. Let's focus on getting better in our sport right now. After that, we can talk about everything else that's going on. Paced breathing, lower heart rate, all involved with mindfulness. And then again, that progressive relaxation we talked about earlier with Edward Jacobson's relaxation technique. So these are just some of the things that we use here at CCRI to help the student athletes. But again, the key is recognition. We have to be able to recognize the issues going on, the behavior changes that we see in those student athletes. We need to be able to address that and say, hey, come on in here for a second. I noticed you weren't looking so great. Are you okay? Everything all right? What's going on? And it's okay to ask those questions. So I think that recognition and then reporting anything that you come up with, if it's more serious, reporting that to the right person, and then finally referring that individual to get some help. So again, I'm going to turn it over to Mike. Mike has some outstanding stuff coming up. We had a preview of it. So Mike, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thanks, Kevin. Great stuff. Good afternoon, everyone. And I want to also thank Courtney and Jason for keeping us on task, mostly Courtney for getting the slides in here and getting us on this technology that I guess we're all getting used to. So my pleasure to be here. Hope to share what we're doing here at Nova Southeastern in beautiful Fort Lauderdale, Florida. See a lot of friends on the call and some people I haven't met, but I really appreciate the opportunity to share some information. I want to start with saying this was an effort of a great team that I have here or had here and in my administration over the last couple of years to put our AIM program together. I also want to congratulate all of you for taking the time to be here to have this conversation and to listen. I think, so I commend you for that. My hope after today, and I hope there's continued conversations nationally. And I talk nationally, I don't see any, I see on the bottom of my screen here, D2, NAI, D3, all these organizations. For what we're talking about today, it's my opinion, we're talking about student athletes. It doesn't matter what label we're putting on these kids. We're all dealing with 18 to 22-year-olds, and we're in a very important role, as I see it, as leaders. Whatever your title may be, you can be a graduate assistant up to the athletic director, and all the way in between, a volunteer coach, but we all have a responsibility. That's what we signed up for. My other hope is that I hope this conversation helps you have a conversation on your own campuses. Kevin mentioned it earlier. We're not all blessed and fortunate enough to have all the resources to put in place maybe other programs that you've seen. Here at Nova Southeastern, we're very fortunate, very blessed, not only to have a great senior leadership team here with me in the athletic department, but people on our campus who are capable, who are willing to be part of this. And you'll see how this was a collaborative effort as we put this in place a couple years ago, okay? The other thing I'd just like to couch this whole thing with before I jump in, you need to be open-minded. I learned a lot as a leader, as an athletic director. I learned a lot through this process. It wasn't easy. These are hard conversations to have. These are uncomfortable conversations to have. But if you can take away one thing, and there's a reason why you're all on here, unless it was mandated by your bosses, but I hope to think that you're at least willing enough to, how do I have this conversation? Because it's not easy. And there was a lot of pushback. There continues to be pushback, whether that's from staff members, coaches, even student athletes. However, I'm here to tell you as a witness to doing this, if you haven't had the conversation, as hard as it's going to be, do it. Do it. This is one of the most gratifying things that I've done in my long career as an administrator, coach in collegiate athletics. And, get the right team around you, empower the people around you. And even if you can just have the beginning stages of having this conversation on your campuses around mental health with your student athletes, you're to be commended, and I'm here to help. And there's a lot of people around the country. So I think this movement, you want to talk about movements, a lot going on in our country. I hope this continues to be a movement. All right. So again, you're going to see our presentation here. I know Kevin touched a lot on the COVID-19. I'm going to try not to make it about that. It's almost hard to separate that from all our lives right now. But I want to talk about the bigger problem, how our program came to be. And I hope there's more than one question at the end here, because to me, that's this conversation, including Q&A, is very, very important as we learn about a lot of other programs across the country. Okay. All right. So this was almost a case study type of approach, right? I mean, statement of the problem, right? And Kevin touched with some unbelievable eye-opening statistics. And a lot of that was shared with me, as we were going into this. So I probably should say that we probably talked about this for about 15 months prior to even implementing it in 18. So it took a while even for me to get there, to put some things in place, for me to have the bold leaders like Steve Orris and Angie Jaber, who led this on my team to get me comfortable. So again, this isn't going to happen overnight. So this statement of the problem, you saw some statistics. Collegiate student athletes have higher incidences of mental health issues than the general student body. We know that. What are we going to do about it? Okay. Some of you may have not, right? I guess if you're not an NCAA member, the NCAA, I thought, put one of the greatest documents out, a few years back, and provided 4 practices for all member institutions, okay, required to address, so basically legislation. 4 best practices, right? Do what you want, but here's some best practices. Ensure student athletes are assisted by licensed qualified professionals. That could look a lot different. You'll see what it looks like for us. It may have to be a third party. We're very fortunate to have some internal people right here in our School of Psychology and our Henderson Center mental health organization. Establish a flow chart for all staff members. Provide mental health screening and services for student athletes. And then educate and normalize conversations about mental health. Okay, I touched on all 4 of those. So there's the identification of the problem. We all know it, but now it's in black and white on paper. Next slide. Okay, here's Nova Southeastern's athletic department's AIM program. AIM, academics, injury, mental health. We really believe it's part of our mission, our daily mission, to coach, teach, and provide an experience that's the most well-rounded experience for our student athletes. Okay? One of the most, for those of you that know me, one of the most competitive guys, you'll come across, from a wins and loss and all that. But I'm telling you, this is a program that will make a difference. If you're questioning, how are we going to fit this in? That was some of the pushback. Coaches are going to be, hey, well, where are we going to have time to have conversations? We got the care hours, et cetera, et cetera. I'm telling you, and I've seen this for a while now, taking a look at the academic piece, the injury piece, and the mental health, because we feel it's all related. This will absolutely affect your student athlete's performance on the field, in the pool, on the water. Okay, so we prioritized health and wellness. I think that's where you have to start. No matter what it looks like, there has to be a prioritization in your core values of health and wellness for your student athlete. I know we all have it, but again, what are we doing about it? Of course, confidentiality has to be priority. That's another pushback. How is this going to be confidential? Well, there's where we need the professionals. And again, if you have to search those out, maybe you have them on campus, maybe you have people on campus that you don't even know that can provide these services. These are good conversations to bring to your AD to bring to your provost or to your president. This is really important. Maybe you just tie into the mental health counselors right on your own campus, because you have it for students. There's someone there like our Henderson Clinic, okay? So be creative, all right? NSU has a longstanding relationship with the Henderson Clinic, okay? And we also have a good relationship with our School of Psychology, Dr. Rob Seifer, in our case, who's a licensed clinical psychologist. Utilize your resources, a collaborative approach, okay? So we took the best practices and developed the academic injury mental health program, as you read it in those bullet points, okay? We'll get into the other things. I mean, there's a lot of text here. You can read it on your own. I don't want to insult anybody by just reading this to you. If you can't tell, I'm pretty passionate about this, so I can get going. But we'll get into the other slides here in a second. So next slide. Okay, the procedure, how we do it. So you know what it is, and who's part of that. Okay, so we make this part of our initial squad meetings. That's what we call it. I don't know if that's, compliance meetings, they would call it one time, your team orientation, whatever your version of that is. We just think, again, this has to be ingrained into our culture, and it has to be part of the fabric, and again, truly part of the mission, okay? So we do it as part of the initial squad meetings. Then we also, every student athlete completes a mental health education module. There's a lot of resources out there to complete this mental health education module, which includes an explanation of services offered, right? So we say there's this service and that service. Again, if you're trying to find a starting point, speak to your student affairs people, speak to people across campus, your academic services, disability services. There has to be something on each of your campuses and where you can collaborate and help get this started, okay? Dr. Seifer, in our case, who's the clinical psychologist out of our School of Psychology, he does then do an evaluation for each of the student athletes, okay? The screening process is key, right? You got to have some baseline. You got to have and know where you started before you know where you're going, okay? And I think one of the important points of this procedure, and again, it was probably tweaked along the way, there was a lot of conversation, like, how are we going to mandate this? What do these kids decide, we're not going to do this? Confidentiality, okay? This is a self-report screening. So about that third last sentence, self-report screening, that's how it's explained, that's how it's implemented, okay? And then the main goal of this initial meeting is really, the main goal is not only the screening, but to inform the student athletes that you have resources, okay? When you experience anxiety, depression, sleep disorders, okay? Any of that. We know it's going to happen. It's a fact. We saw the stats. It's there. Can't hide behind it. Next slide. I touched on this a little bit. Who's the AIM team, okay? Academics, injury, mental health, okay? So we have a coordinator, Steve Orris, who's my assistant athletic director for sports performance, all right, strength and conditioning, nutrition. He was the guy. Before that, it was my associate athletic director, who was the program coordinator. So we have to find the person there that's passionate about it, that can coordinate and collaborate well with a lot of people, and also be able to facilitate some tough conversations, okay? You have a program director, in our case, assistant AD for sports medicine. You could also have a sport administrator or sport oversight person, right? Or your number 2, okay? Or your SWA, okay? So I think that's really important. Then from there, your team, okay, is made up of every head coach, their academic advisor, again, depending on what it looks like in your world, someone from academics, someone that oversees academics, and then the athletic trainer for each team, okay? So you have the program director, that head coach, that academic advisor, and that athletic trainer, okay? They're, as it says here, each member of the team represents an arm of the goals of the program, right? Someone that can address injuries, I, academics, A, and then mental health when we bring them in, okay? I think the trainer is a key personnel, and I know a lot of us struggle with having enough athletic trainers, enough time. How do we carve that out? It just has to, it has to get done. What are we going to do if we have contract trainers? Okay. I think, as we all know, right, a lot of conversations start and end with the athletic trainer. I think empowering your athletic trainer is key. Okay. And we've empowered our athletic trainers to initiate these conversations with the student athletes about mental health services that are available. We're not jumping in and saying, hey, I'm going to talk to you about depression, anxiety, and sleep disorders. Not your world, not your role. But it is our role to talk about, here, Susie and Joey, here are the resources. Just remind them of these resources, okay? And that these services are available. And you can consult with your team physician for direct referral to the professionals in the field, okay? Next. Sort of touched on this. Sorry, Courtney, I probably could have put this in better order. It's sort of what I touched on at the beginning. But I just want to highlight a few things, right? This is like the initial evaluation, because I would tell you, whatever program you put in place, right, this is just a moving target. This is a continued conversation. This is a working document, because things are just so forever changing, okay? And again, this was born out of a case study. Again, you can use this as your case study if you need something, no problem. Gathering facts, it's a year-long conversation. Where are the services? Where can we get this? Where can we provide intervention? Where can we provide intervention, for the problems that exist, okay? And then I'm going to jump right to the bottom. I'm happy to say, after we looked at this, after the second year of the program, again, be patient. Tell your AD to be patient, whoever you need to get this signed off on, okay? That after a year or two, which we thought was a huge win, you see it down there, bold, 100% of the athletic department graduating seniors reported that they were aware of the mental health services available to them. That's a win right there. That is a win right there, okay? Most importantly, they reported they knew how to access these services. We got to start so fundamental on this. And again, we jumped way too far ahead. That's something we learned. You got to just step at a time, get everyone comfortable about the conversation. Next, I think is a flow chart, maybe. Yeah. Okay, this was flow chart. Okay, you can read it. I think it's probably the most important document, that's there. Again, plug and play, maybe by title, but I think this is a pretty good flow chart, which not only satisfies the NCAA's best practices, but I think as we've presented this a few different places, including to our Sunshine State Conference institutions, this should work for everybody. I know everybody works in flow charts and everything, maybe too much in flow charts anymore, but here you go. So add names where you see fit, right? And I think here's one thing I want to tell you, because this is hopefully another good takeaway for you. When dealing with the mental health referral, right? It's going to come to an assistant coach. It's going to come to an athletic trainer, could come to a sports information or a student athlete's just talking about it. What we really want to address, what do we do? What do we do when I hear that? So we had staff meetings about this, and we just listened to our coaches or listened to our trainer. I'm not comfortable. Here's a flow chart that'll help you. Don't take that on yourself, okay? Initial responder, it could be anybody. It could be a volunteer assistant. We believe that everybody has the responsibility to at least refer our student athletes through this flow chart. Again, I'm not interested. And that's not what I signed up for. Well, you did. And that's the responsibility we have when working with 18 to 22-year-olds. And again, you're going to have to talk through it with them. You're not going to be able to throw this up there and say, we're going to do this. Okay. It sort of speaks for itself, right? So just one example here on the left side of the screen, initial responder. Okay. Let's call it an assistant coach. Mental health incident. Just an unusual conversation. Or a student athlete was comfortable this time, to Kevin's text earlier, gets a text like that. Just something off. Okay. Is this based on, here's another piece that's in this. Is this based on a relationship, violence, sex, or a gender? Hey, that's Title IX, right? You see, you move over, yes. There's something in and around there. There's nothing wrong to refer somebody to. It can always move to the other side of the chart. There's experts in the field. Don't keep it in. We're not experts in any of these fields. We need to be experts in referring student athletes, okay? So you see the yes and no. Again, I think it's pretty self-explanatory as far as where you go, how you do it, and you just follow the flow chart. I think the flow chart on the right, that's where you sort of get into, is there an immediate threat? Of course, as you see immediate threat, you're going to call 911. No. Then you sort of move into, is this a Title IX? Is this not a Title IX? It goes to the appropriate person. Of course, most things are going to stay in that light gray area, which I say stays internal. We're going to hear it. What did we say the statistics? We're going to hear it 57% of the time, whatever. There's going to be something, right? And whoever that student athlete trusts, okay? Whoever that student athlete trusts to have a conversation with it or just even mention something. I'm really struggling. I'm 0 for 15 this week, coach. And, I just got all these other things going on in my life and, the family and this and that. I mean, continue to have the conversation. All right. But that's when you become that, initial responder. Okay. Let me wrap up by a few things. I think that's the last slide, Court. Did we have one more, or was that it? Okay, I guess this just sort of wraps it, sort of the fact sheet. So just, in conclusion, right, student athletes have been identified as higher incidence of mood disturbances, general sense of negative well-being. We talked about the best 4 practices. There's some research statistics there. And I guess maybe that third bullet point on the left, this flow chart was a collaborative effort, athletics administration, sports medicine, interdisciplinary team docs, physical therapists. Don't have to be on campus, whoever you're working with. They're going to love to be part of a collaborative effort. We all know the academic, side of the house loves the collaboration piece. Get those people on your campuses or affiliated with your campus involved in this process, okay? Again, end where I start. I congratulate you for even being on here, listening, starting to have the conversation, looking to do your program better. Some of you probably have maybe even a better program than this, or can even help us with the way we're approaching this, okay? Have buy-in, be open-minded. Ask your athletic director or your provost to be open-minded about this. Ask your coaches, assistant coaches. Yes, there'll be difficult conversations. And last, I'll say, if you're doing something, even just a little bit, if you're not, please do, because it'll make a big difference in these young people's lives, and they'll thank you for it. You will come out. Your culture will be seen as one that's transparent, that's honest, that's part of the mission. Again, even if you're doing something, even very small, in this arena, on your campuses, in our roles, with our responsibilities, you are making a difference. I've seen it myself. I'm proud to present what we do here on campus, and happy to share and answer any questions that anybody else has. Thank you.
All right, thank you both. We will now go ahead with some questions. So the first one, Kevin, this one's for you. Does the mental health first aid course address mental health issues that may impact specific populations of students more significantly? For example, LGBTQ, POC, international students, etc.
Yes, it does. It actually includes, they do give a lot of examples of each group of individuals that you would have or possibly have on your campuses. Absolutely.
Perfect. The next one is for both of you. A lot of the tips and suggestions are fantastic. There's new information. Is there anything specific that you have done or have plans in place for your staff?
Go ahead, Mike.
I would say educate, right? I mean, I think this needs to be reviewed almost as exact PowerPoint. So thank you for organizing, Courtney. We'll have you come down to Florida and you present it to our staff meetings in August. Well, we can do it Zoom now, right? We'll get you out of Ohio. But yeah, so I mean, yeah, because you got to remember, this is constantly changing, right? You have this, the program's not changing, but the personnel is changing. And also the comfort level of people talking about this or what I should do, or even the understanding. So I do think, weaving it into our staff meetings, where we'd like to go is we really want this to be part of our onboarding process of coaches and administrators. So those are two areas that we sort of have it ingrained, or we will have it ingrained coming up.
We are at the Community College of Rhode Island. We're actually working with the Office of Student Affairs, Dean of Students Office, to redo a lot of the referral programs here. And that was supposed to take place before COVID actually hit, and then all the energy went elsewhere. But they're in the process of trying to get that all together here. So same as Mike, we're just trying to educate as many individuals as we can, and working collaboratively, like Mike said, with other departments on campus.
This one again is for both of you, but I'll ask each of you separate. So Mike, first off, you talked about your AIM program team. How do you train those individuals?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I really think that's where we depend on other campus partners, right? I mean, I think we would start with, the Student Counseling Center. We all have to have a version of that. I think spending time, with that group, whoever your student counseling, I think we depended on them, right? Because I would say if you're looking at even this last slide that's up there, the collaboration of the flow chart, right? You have Title IX coordinators. We all have have that Henderson Clinic, we're coming in here and saying, hey, you guys are the experts in the field. Can you teach us a little bit about it? So I don't know if we had a certification process as much as we just asked the group to get, and that's probably why it took 15 to 18 months. You know, we just asked, hey, we're thinking about starting up. I don't think we called it the AIM program at that point, you know, and we want to collaborate with others on campus to address mental health. And we sort of just worked with others. And that was in essence our training.
Okay, and then for Kevin, do you have a point person that oversees mental health programming and oversight for the department? And if so, what does your training look like?
We just hired a social worker who oversees much of that, and she's actually in charge of going through the new material that we have. But we, just like we train our coaches in CPR and AED, we also make them take that mental first aid course. So it's just as important as CPR and AED, because most of the time the trainers, the coaches, like I said earlier, they are going to be the first response. They are going to be the first stop for those student athletes. As long as that, and I say that, as long as the trusting relationship has been developed between coach and student athlete and the team, that student athlete is going to feel comfortable coming to those individuals. So that's why we feel so strongly that, you know, CPR and AED is obviously very important, but so is mental health first aid. So that's why we trained everybody in that as well.
All right, back to you, Mike. This goes back to your AIM program again. And I will also say that the flowcharts that were shared will, again, be in the recording that Jason mentioned, will be distributed to you guys after. But Mike, how does the reporting get back to you as the AD in this AIM program process?
On a limited basis, right? And because of the confidentiality piece, but I would say in general, it would get reported back up through, I would say maybe twice a semester, meeting with my program director. And it's sort of like, I just want to know it's working, right? Because if he comes back and we sort of put a yellow, green, yellow, and red, I do want to know just in general, you know, what's going on at the athletic department. I asked for some statistics. To be quite honest with you, that's still a work in progress of what, you know, it's like some other things on our campus, right? On a need to know basis. How much does Mike need to know? But right now I need to know the generalities that, one, that this is working, right? That we do have kids that are utilizing resources, that this interdisciplinary team and this collaborative effort, that we're utilizing those resources. And again, I think it'll probably turn into now, I guess this would be the second full year, and I'm not sure if we had a chance to survey our student athletes, that they know where, you know, where to go for these. And last, I guess I'll say is, I think to Kevin's earlier point, if you all of a sudden see people that are comfortable with having these conversations openly, or kids are not resistant to when they're getting asked to being referred to the Henderson Clinic or being there, I think that to me is enough feedback that this program is working. So, you know, I remember 2 or 3 years ago, Henderson would call and say, listen, you know, we've had all these referrals, but nobody followed up. The student athletes don't want to come over. But now when I'm getting information back that they don't have enough time on the books to take those appointments on. It's scary in one respect, but I also know the program's working.
Thank you. And then this one's for both of you, or whichever one wants to answer. What has been your experience with any online therapists? One that was mentioned was the Talkspace app and website.
I have not. I know there's some of our psychology professors have actually use that in their private practices, but I have not. I don't have any experience with the online therapy. No.
And nor do I. I can tell you it's a conversation happening on campus right now. Now that is probably a result of COVID, and maybe also a result of scheduling and the demand that we would have. So I think it's going to be through a telehealth platform But I think that remains to be seen. So I don't have any really good suggestions on that, but I think it's going to be a thing, here sooner than later, that whatever we can depend on to get those subject matter experts involved in a program on our campuses, I think is a win.
All right, we have 2 questions left. One is, can either of you comment on the use of mandated referrals to counseling staff from the athletics department?
So it's got to come from the student athlete or the student. They have to express, kind of like with disability services, they have to reach out to one of us. And then that referral goes forward. If we feel that situation needs to be referred, we do it. The Dean of Students is always notified, and then the Dean of Students would refer forward from that point to either the social worker or, again, to professional help.
Yeah, I think mandates, I'm not quite sure there could be a mandate, but we utilize our team doctor. If there seems to be some pushback, if maybe where the question's coming from, if somebody, we refer them and they don't want to go. I mean, we try to use, I would say, our team doctor one. And again, I think at the end of the day, it's voluntary. Unfortunately, it's voluntary. All we could do is suggest, that those student athletes, again, take advantage of the resources. The only other thing we have in play there is, I think, and I just had my program director sent me a message. We have like a behavior, sort of an expectations type contract, as a student athlete at Nova Southeastern. And I think you can weave it into that part of the expectations is that you utilize the resources, disability services, but now we got to now we would involve the mental health referrals. So just some suggestions there.
All right, and this is our last question. So resources can become a challenge on our campuses. How have you worked with your campus administration to implement your programs and get resources and the money to support it?
It was difficult at first here, but the Dean of Students office actually pays for the entire mental health first aid for everybody. And I'm not sure where that funding comes from, but it comes from Student Affairs and Dean of Students office. So that's good. So the coaches, the athletic department does not have to pay for the coaches or the trainers to take that training. That's all done by Dean of Students and Student Affairs.
Yeah, I would say don't try to do it alone. That would be my first tip. And I think the conversation has to be internal, right? And you got to figure out, who's that team going to be. But I think you got to quickly reach out to your best, your best supporters, across campus. Hopefully that's Student Affairs. I mean, I know, there's a lot of this, but there needs to be a lot of this, right? I mean, there has to be a relationship there. Maybe next in line is maybe your Title IX coordinators. The other suggestion I would have is if you get some FaceTime, I guess depending on what level you're at with your AD, or the AD needs to get some FaceTime with, his boss, whether that's the president or whoever he reports up to. I would show him the first couple of these slides and show him some real statistics. But circling back to where I say partner with Student Affairs, and I think that's awesome, Kevin. That gave me an idea. And there's a lot of insurance coverage now, right? A lot of your insurance, the student athlete insurance, is starting to cover this. So don't forget about that. Look into that. But I think if you get together with Student Affairs, they have the same issues. They're dealing with a bigger population, more likely than you are to deal with this. They don't have enough mental health counselors either, or enough time in the day, or enough appointments. So, and I think if you go in there together, again, whoever you got to go to, CFO, COO, I think you're going to get supported. And if not, tell them Kevin will come see you.
Thanks, Mike.
All right, that's it for the questions. Do you guys have any last minute closing thoughts you want to share?
Sure. I mean, years ago, I probably would have walked away from certain situations and said, I didn't hear it. But now I am not afraid at all to go ahead and ask a question. And all you have to do simply is say, hey, how you doing? Everything all right? That's it. And then they can divulge what they want to divulge. But I think there's not enough people that go ahead and ask that question. And I think that shows so many things. Number one, it shows that your athletic director, coming from me, they care. And then same thing with your coaches. It just shows, again, that going back to that trusting relationship. Hey, how you doing? You know, it's just a great question to ask, I think. But years ago, you know, you didn't think of that up front. You know, you're just worried about practice, or you're worried about that next piece of paper that has to go somewhere else, or, you know, you don't have time. If a student athlete walks into my office, I drop everything and I just sit down and listen. So I think that is a big factor, especially now. These kids are going through, and I say kids, the coaches are going through it just like we are. So they might be going through some same problems and issues and challenges that they have in their lives. So again, that's another group that we have to start looking at, listening to.
Yeah, and I guess my closing, you know, would be, and I think that's very good, Kevin. And I think, you know, if you're looking to get started, just find people who are passionate about this, and you know, it may be somebody you're not even thinking of. It could be a coach, an assistant coach. It doesn't have to be anybody in particular. And I'm going to leave you with this. I think just in this whole area, something that stayed with me, and this came out of these several meetings leading up to it. How do you even first get started on this? You know, we want to listen, validate, and refer. Listen, validate, and refer. And again, we have to have some systems in place, like, you know, like you saw here, like Kevin has. But again, it's going to be a marathon to get where we all want to get. But it is something that I would strongly suggest become a priority on each of your campuses, and just to have the start of the conversation, because it's not going anywhere. It's not going anywhere. And last, to Kevin's point, you have to make it part of your culture and part of the trust, that people aren't afraid to have the conversation. So I appreciate being able to participate today.
Well, that's all the time that we have for today. So on behalf of D2 ADA, NAIA ADA, Natica, and Nadia, thank you for taking the time with us today to discuss these best practices with Kevin and Mike. Thanks to everyone that participated in today's session, and we hope that you have a great rest of the week and continue to stay safe.
Thank you.